Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Sunday morning session. My special guests today are Louise Stewart from Multitude of Voices, Elizabeth De Brito from the Daffodil Perspective, and Gabriella Di Laccio from DONNE. And these organisations are all relatively new and unique in their own way, but they each share a common goal: to address gender inequality in music programming and repertoire. Multitude of Voices has published 3 sacred choral music anthologies, presenting 63 women composers spanning 800 years of music across 3 printed volumes. The Daffodil Perspective is the first ever gender-balanced, racially equitable, inclusive classical music podcast/radio show in the world. And DONNE is a charitable organisation whose main goal is to celebrate, advance and amplify women in music. It's so wonderful to have the 3 of you here with us this morning, and each of you are going to speak for around 10 to 15 minutes, and I'd like to invite Louise to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, very much. Thank you very much to the Association of British Choral Directors for their invitation to speak today about gender inequality in choral programming and repertoire. I'm assuming that most delegates will have explored or will go on to explore our exhibition space, so I will try not to repeat information which I've written there. I do hope there'll be time in the future to explore this very brief overview in greater depth. Our work at Multitude of Voices takes a fresh look at the traditional norms of church music to ensure that historical bias and omissions do not distance those who live, work and worship within that field, including congregations and concert audiences of all ages, from the increasingly equitable and inclusive practices of wider society. Our charitable work is project-based, and I'm going to speak specifically this morning about one of our inclusive projects, Multitude of Voices anthology series, Sacred Music by Women Composers, and its role in addressing gender inequality in choral programming and repertoire, where that relates to the underrepresentation of women. Our series brings together composers, archivists, music editors, translators, historians, poets, teachers, researchers, and others working in the education, church, and music sectors, and provides a one-stop shop for those choirs which may have very few sacred works by women composers within their repertoires. Each volume brings women together in community, in just the same way that male composers have been brought together within sacred music anthologies for centuries without question. The series has been carefully planned to include composers historically overlooked, historically well known but since forgotten, current high-profile living composers, and emerging composers who may, at whatever age, be at the start of their composing career. The series so far includes 72 works representing the music of 63 diverse composers, ranging in difficulty from a tiny 2-verse solo song by Morfydd Owen, previously published just once in a memorial edition of her works in 1923, to large-scale, complex works for multiple voice parts composed only last year. We're going to hear a short excerpt now of Morfydd Owen's song, a setting of Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem, He Prayeth Best, Who Loveth Best, sung by Hannah King, accompanied by Owain Park. Carefully researched biographies have been included to begin the process of plugging the gaps of knowledge for those of us whose education did not include proportionate representation of women composers at O-level, GCSE, A-level or beyond. Nearly all of the works have now been recorded professionally and will be freely available later this autumn on an improved website. I'm mindful that many of you will already be including works by women composers, but I would like to offer a few practical suggestions of ways to use our anthology series to help address gender inequality in choral programming and repertoire. Take time in rehearsal and within your concert programs to explore what historical barriers might have led to a woman composer's work falling into obscurity, and which of those barriers is still preventing women composers of sacred music from being fairly represented today. We're now going to hear an excerpt of a song by 18th century composer Maria Theresia von Paradis, virtuoso pianist, organist and singer, a blind musician who moved in the circle of Mozart and Salieri. The work has been edited and adapted by Olivia Sparkhall. We're going to hear it sung by Aurora Nova, directed by Patrick Craig, accompanied by Kathy Lamb. Don't be afraid to make gender inequality an issue and to discuss it. There may be more willingness to diversify the repertoire within your choir than you might assume. If you find prejudice, challenge it. Set a new standard. Agree a manageable and affordable plan. This might be as simple as a flyer within your concert program explaining how you plan to do things differently in the future, or it might be an exciting development, such as the BBC Singers' commitment to include 50% women composers within their programming going forward. If a purchase cannot be afforded, team up with other local choirs to share the cost and the volumes. We've done the hard bit, funding the series through loans and making use of huge amounts of donated labour. Now we need you to pick up this work and run with it and spread the word about what we're doing to make this work financially viable. We have much more music waiting in the wings, but require long-term financial investment to continue this sort of work. And I know that Elizabeth de Brito is going to talk more about this later in her own section. Consider what political and social message may be given out by your choir's programming. Does the programming make use of your choir's public voice to address issues of historical and current inequality? We're now going to hear a short excerpt from Averell Coleridge-Taylor's setting of William Blake's The Shepherd, composed in 1958, but never published before, sung by the Gesualdo Six, accompanied by Nicholas Walker. It seems extraordinary to think that that work has never been published or recorded before now. If a particular text is required for a season of the year, explore a setting by a composer not yet included within your choir's repertoire. We're now going to hear a short excerpt from Emily Hazrati's setting of the medieval text Coventry Carol, performed by Siglo de Oro, directed by Patrick Allies. If your choir regularly includes Stainless Crucifixion in Holy Week, explore Sarah MacDonald's setting for Good Friday, Crux Fidelis, setting text by 16th century poet Emily Lanier, and sing that and the Stainer on alternate years. Reach out to individuals and organisations such as the Daffodil Perspective and DONNE, who have specialist knowledge which might not be available to you locally. There is support out there, huge knowledge, and online resources are being developed all the time. For recommendations of liturgical works throughout the year, look up the website greathostcomposers.org. This database contains the donated research of 7 US and UK church musicians and organisations, including Multitude of Voices and Sarah MacDonald of Selwyn College, Cambridge. This major initiative will continue to be developed over the next 2 years, but is reliant on voluntary contributions. Tell your audience or congregation what you are doing and why. Involve them. Buy and use our books. Give women composers the visibility they have lacked on our choir library shelves and concert platforms. In summary, Elizabeth is now going to share a short advert, which you will also find on our Multitude of Voices exhibition space.
Just a sec. Sorry, Louise. I'll be 2 seconds. I've just got to swap from sharing audio to sharing video. I'll be 1 second.
Multitude of Voices anthology series Sacred Music by Women Composers brings together the carefully selected work of 63 women composers spanning 8 centuries of composition, representing a broad range of musical styles. Most works have never been published before. These groundbreaking volumes have been widely praised for their high-quality music, attention to detail, and value for money. Each volume includes a cappella and accompanied works. Volume 1 contains 22 SATB anthems for use throughout the church year. Volume 2 contains 24 works ranging from simple solos through to major works for experienced upper voices choirs. Volume 3 contains 26 contrasting anthems for mixed voices, providing material throughout the Christmas season. Economically printed octavos and digital downloads are available from multitudeofvoices.co.uk. Multitude of Voices is a non-profit organisation reliant on sales, sponsorship and donations to support underrepresented and marginalised communities.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Many thanks, Louise, for a fantastic presentation. Just to point out as well that Multitude of Voices do have a stand at our exhibition, so please do go and take a look. I know at the minute people have been focusing on looking at the live sessions, but please do take the opportunity to go and look at the recordings in our resources section and also our exhibition pages. So now we're going to pass over to Elizabeth de Brito from the Daffodil Perspective. I'm just going to move the screen over. Fantastic.
Yeah, I've unmuted myself. It's good. Hello, everyone. I'm Elizabeth de Brito of the Daffodil Perspective. Thank you to Elizabeth and Association of British Choral Directors for having me today. I'm really excited to speak with you and tell you about my work. So I'm going to talk about what the Daffodil Perspective is, what it does, why it's important, bits about inclusion and repertoire, and then I'll talk a bit about the necessity of this work, why it's essential, and as Louise mentioned briefly, I'll be talking about the financial cost to all of this, the funding and the aspects of work that come into this. So the Daffodil Perspective, I started it about 3 years ago when I realised that I didn't know any female composers, but there were absolutely hundreds of them. So with a background in radio, I decided that I would create a radio show to champion them. I've always been a big believer that the best way to champion change is to create change. It is not just enough to talk about it. You have to take action. So that's what I did. I created the Daffodil Perspective. As I said at the beginning, the mission was to champion female composers. This has evolved somewhat since in the past 3 years to being, as I said at the beginning, gender balanced and racially equitable. So from the very beginning, there were 50% female composers on every single show. That's still the same. Now I make sure that 50% of those composers are women of colour. That includes at least one Black female composer, one Asian female composer on every single show, as well as 25% male composers of colour. So, and again, one Black male composer and one Asian male composer on every single show as well. As we talk about inclusion and equality, that's always been really important to me, to showcase the whole breadth of the classical music world in every single show. One of the things that I constantly find is that it is there is a lot of tokenism, there's a lot of exceptionalism. One of the things that I wanted to do with the show was a reaction against that. There's a lot of playing women composers only on International Women's Day or a concert of women composers, and then they're not included elsewhere. So it's really important to have it as a constant consideration, to always be thinking of women composers. And I've always been a big believer in quotas and the way they work. Unfortunately, there's so much bias, there's so much prejudice A lot of it is conscious, a lot of it is unconscious. The way to overcome it is to have it as a constant consideration in what we do in our practice. And then, because we've had centuries of basically white supremacist patriarchal programming, recordings, concerts, everything. So to overcome that, it takes a lot of work, and the more we get used to it, the more it becomes second nature, before it gets to a point where you don't have to think about having 50% female composers on a concert or a radio show, because it's the norm. And until we get to that point, it does take a lot of work. So that's the reason behind the quotas. That's why I always do what I do, and it means that I can play composers from all over the world, which is always really important, as classical music, whilst historically was quite Eurocentric, based in Austria, Germany, UK, is spread to America, Venezuela, Brazil, Ethiopia, China, Japan. So it's really important to represent everybody who's creating classical music, especially in the past 50, 100 years. So that's what I do, and I strive to include people of all nationalities, all ethnicities, all eras as possible in every single show, just to get as much variety in it. And I do play a lot of choral music. It's a choral show, so I do play a lot of choral music, so that's good. So it started being about championing female composers, and it still is. I still play a lot of female composers, but I do champion composers of all underrepresented and marginalized people as well. So I think I should explain the name. I get that question a lot, and I've actually finally figured it out, so it's really exciting, because I used to say the reason it was called the Daffodil Perspective, I could make up something pretentious about it being surrounded by a dark, dull canon, and it's a bright, shining place, but actually it's kind of true. So the Daffodil Perspective is named after the brightest, most shiny flower in the world for a reason. Daffodils are the first spring flowers. They're saying, here comes the sun. And yes, that's a Beatles reference. Daffodils say, here comes the spring, the sunshine, winter is ending. Daffodils are a sign of hope, inspiration, light, and potential. And daffodils point the way out of the dark, out of the winter. And the Daffodil Perspective is about embodying all these characteristics, and it exists to shine a light out of the darkness. Because there's so much darkness in the world. There's so much injustice, racism, sexism, white privilege, homophobia, etc. And on the other side, there's a lot of anger as well. There's a lot of people screaming for change. There's a lot of frustration everywhere. And the Daffodil Perspective is all about positivity. It's all about brightness. It's all about being a shining yellow beacon for change, which is one of the things that I think is being really important, because it's not about being angry all the time and moaning and complaining about the lack of female composers in concert halls and radio shows and etc all the time. It doesn't work like that. The Daffodil Perspective exists to be a positive space for 90 minutes of just joy, and that's what it is. I think that's really important. So yes, we are all angry about the fact that these brilliant composers have been marginalized for so long, and every time you hear a new composer, you're just thinking, why did I never hear this person before? And you're listening to Ruth Gibbs or Margaret Bonds and just thinking their music is absolutely incredible, and it's so upsetting that you've never heard it. But the best way to do it is to change it to be a solution-based organization. I think that's really important. As we seek to solve problems, the best way to do that is to be a solution based, to figure out what the problems are and to create it and to solve it. So that's what the Daffodil Perspective is. It's about providing a space that's full of joy, full of hope, full of light and fun. And the way we talk about these composers as well, I think, matters, in that it's not just a deep dark story about how awfully sexist and racist the industry is, and being a social commentary, although I can do that, and I do that when I write. I think the show, it's really important to just have a space where this is normal and exciting, and these composers are just celebrated because they're brilliant and amazing and should be played all the time. So that's why the Daffodil Perspective is called the way it is. It's showing the way to a better a classical music world full of colour and endlessly evolving and just fun. So much of when I grew up, I did not get the message that classical music was fun. I was a Dougalite woman, mixed race woman, surrounded by white people or white privilege in the UK in Hertfordshire. I was the only non-white music student in school, in my music courses, everything. And the only composers I was listening to were Haydn, Mozart and Beethoven. Neither of which I like. If I'm really honest, I really don't like Mozart. I really don't. So you're being exposed to a very narrow stylistic compositional voice. It's very challenging when you're a child, if that's the only thing that you're exposed to and that's not what you engage with, that's not what you that's not what resonates with you, and that's all that classical music is purported to be. It's not seen as a very welcoming space. It's not seen as a space that really holds anything, which is why one of the many reasons why I stopped being involved with it as an adult and spent 12 years exploring all kinds of other music. And what brought me back was discovering that classical music wasn't this narrow idea that I'd been exposed to growing up. That it was lots of other things as well. Anyway, I realize I'm kind of rambling, so I'll quickly just talk about, so that's the Daffodil Perspective. One thing that I do want to bring up just briefly before I go, I've got 2 minutes, is how much it costs. So the Daffodil Perspective is a voluntary organisation. It's just me, no funding, no sponsors, no anything. It takes 12 hours to produce a single show. That's producing, researching, curating, editing, social promotion, everything. And it takes a lot of work researching these composers. I've become an expert over the past 3 years. So there is a lot of specialist knowledge that's involved. And it's not funded. So it costs over about £1,000 a year as a direct financial cost. And then that's 15 grand in unpaid labor hours, which is something that is not often discussed in this work. There seems to be a lot of expectation about how much is done for free. All my work, unfortunately, is free, and it is work. It is not, while I enjoy it immensely, this is not my relaxing time. This is not something that I'm doing as a way to relax. It's work, it is labor hours. A lot of the work that we do here, me, Gabriella, Louise, all the other organizations, whilst we are passionate about it and we believe what we're doing is important, it needs to be funded. The work that we do is essential, as well as making this music out there. We are also providing an essential spot between composers and performers that are creating this amazing work. This is how we get it heard. So our work, our research, our platforms are making this music heard. And there is a lot of devaluation. I won't go into it now, but there's a lot of devaluation of the kind of work that is gone on. I think one thing that we need to talk about going forward is how to make this more financially viable, how to get some of our work more funded. As we make it more inclusive and diverse, part of that is making it financially viable, making sure that this work is valued. Because at the moment, if we're all doing this for free, it's not. It's showing people who are paid to do their work. That is how we show value. It's a capitalist society. So as we think about more about what we do. Hire me as a repertoire consultant. If you are looking for specialist knowledge about female composers, that hire me for £50 an hour, however much, we can talk about it, but it costs money. The work I do, my expertise, it is not free. Neither is Louise's, neither is Gabriella's. So as you look to do this, and you look to increase your knowledge, use it, especially as we've already spent hundreds, thousands of hours getting the knowledge that you need. Instead of you trawling through the internet, working out which, we've already done it. We already know which composers you should be playing, which composers are awesome, which musicians are amazing. So do you think about that when you're looking to get more diverse and inclusion in your work? Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It kind of rambled on a bit, but yeah, thank you.
Can I just say huge thanks to Elizabeth for that advocacy role there. It is hugely important for each of us to support each other, and I thoroughly enjoy conversations with Elizabeth, and we often find that we have these themes in common. Thanks for speaking up, Elizabeth, about the funding.
You're on mute, Elizabeth.
Yeah, sorry, that was my accent. Yeah, I've unmuted myself now.
No, I mean, the other Elizabeth is on mute.
Yeah, this isn't going to get confusing.
I think, Gabriella, you should take the floor.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Louise. It's such a pleasure to be here. I really wish we could do this in real life. Hello, it's about time. Oh, little squares of people. But hey, first of all, thank you, ABCG, Elizabeth, Amy, everybody who's involved and all the work you do, and for this invitation and for providing this platform. We are all here and we all do a little bit, but if having a platform to share is always so valuable for all of us. So thank you. I have a guess that many people here already know me, so I'm going to do my intro and who I am really short. And then I'm just going to jump onto DONNE and the work we do. I'm Gabriella Di Laccio. I'm a soprano. I am originally from Brazil. I moved here to study at the Royal College of Music, and then stayed for professional reasons. But I'll always be Brazilian. I would never become, I'm British now, but anyway, you never really blend after a while. You just become something kind of hybrid, I guess. I'm going to share my screen just so I can be sure that I don't go on forever. Just 1 second. How do I do that again? Hold on, I can do it. I can do it. Share my screen. Okay. This one, share. Okay. This is. Can everybody see everything okay?
Yes, we can see that.
So DONNE, I'm going to do like Elizabeth and explain the name briefly. DONNE, it means women in Italian. Di Laccio is, part of my heritage being Italian. So I started DONNE in 2018, almost by chance when I was singing, and I was hired to sing some repertoire with text by Shakespeare back in 2015. And during that year, I found a lot of song cycles with words by Shakespeare, but written by women. And that really kind of started to surprise me. And I just researched a bit more and ended up finding hundreds, thousands, and eventually I came across that famous encyclopedia by Aaron Cohen that had 6,000 women composers. Here are some of the women we have promoted on DONNE in the past years. So eventually you just feel like, am I going to be angry, embarrassed, or I'm going to do something about? Like Elizabeth said, you can't just talk about change. You need to do something. And I wanted to do my part, so I started this. Which at the beginning was a tiny website where I listed the women I could find on that encyclopedia and on Wikipedia, anything that had a link online that people could find more information about them. Because for me, I realized that there were more people doing this for decades, you know, since the 70s. And I knew I was not the first one. And I didn't imagine I was going to be the most musicological approach. I just wanted to bring the stories and to a broader number of people as possible, because to this day is the thing that angers me the most, is that every time you talk about women composer, you find a person of 100 people surprised, and I just can't take it, because you gotta, who are you? Are you blind? Where do you live? And because what's stopping this information to get out there is shocking to me. So I have a great respect for all the people who are here today, and to dozens of other projects doing very specific things, because I think that's what we need. We need all these people doing different things, and we need people to gather them together and then promote them. And I wanted DONNE to be that, the gathering and kind of mixing things and spreading. But of course, it's crazy work. All right, it's super inspirational, but as everybody knows, it's a lot of work. So I'm just going to run through more or less the things that we do. We have the big list of women composers, which is how everything started. When I listed these thousands of women there, and I think we are over 5,000 women on the website right now. It's ever growing, and one of the things I'm going to ask you at the end is just to always share the link and reshare the link, sharing with more composers so that they can be part of it, and we can give them more visibility, and they can, you know, get together and be part of this network of women. So if you come here, you just go search, and then you're gonna get to the database where you can either type a name here, or you can search by century or refine, or some sort of vaguely narrow down. Is not super specific. You have the Ask Clara in Paris for the super specific repertoire list. This is more for you to narrow down your search and find more women. And then you will come to something like that, just, you know, which takes you to more information about that woman, which is normally her website or something else that is online about her. I had to put the Brazilian one, of course. And then there's some of the other things DONNE does. So I like creating multimedia, because I think we are living in a multimedia age where, you know, people don't have time or patience or attention span to read stuff. So the more quicker and vibrant and engaging, the best. So I'm always updating the playlist, divided by, you know, songs or orchestral works or guitar or anything else. I have time to actually do it and separate to make it easier for performers to come here and explore and find more repertoire. Every time we try to put stuff in our concerts, we need to know the time, we need to know if you like the music. So that's the reason of the playlist. We have 6 educational videos, which I really would like to expand. They have between 3 to 5 minutes each, and my dream would be to really have 100, so schools can use it, and just have this quick snap about who was this woman, what she did, and then we have some interviews with living composers as well, which again is a series that needs to continue to go as far as I have funding. The same story. Also have podcast conversations. Hey, Elizabeth is there with some amazing people, you know, that are doing great things, and we talk about many different subjects and share this on the website and also on Apple and Spotify and all the other channels. We have the blog that used to be daily, but I couldn't keep up with that anymore alone. So now it's kind of more article based or news based until I find funding to have a proper sequence to the blog. During the pandemic, we've done a lot of live events, which are all there for people to watch now. So until we can find possibilities to do live events, but you can all go there and watch amazing conversations, not only about women, but about inclusion in different varieties, because inclusion and diversity is such a subject that has so many layers that I couldn't possibly imagine that I would be able to touch them all. But so I find important that always we try to bring different ideas, different people, different backgrounds, so we can enrich myself and everybody listening to the stories. And we have a page called Amplify, where I try to, every time there is a new project and somebody doing something amazing, make sure it's there and share on Twitter as well. And the other thing that actually how DONNE started as well is because when I came up with this huge number of women, I just wanted to investigate what orchestras were doing around the world. And I tell you why orchestras for me, because I thought if this is going to work, we need to go for the people with the most funding, the people that reach more people, the people that actually, the Berlin Philharmonic, the people that have the status, and see what they're doing, because they are the ones, or the radio stations as well, they're the ones that could actually change this much quicker for everybody else, all the chamber music composers, all the choir composers, so that's why my curiosity was with the orchestras. The results were really bad. And then this year I expanded a bit just to have a look at the pop industry, just the top 100 charts, US and UK and in Brazil. And then of course, this year we published a month ago, the 100 orchestras around the world. And I took the decision to include not only women, but also men, and Black and Asian women, Black and Asian men, because of George Floyd and all the prejudice and hate crimes against Asians. I was curious, I wanted to see. And then it's funny because people look at, oh, wow, 11% of the performances included music by women. That means probably one. And then people thought, oh, 5% of the compositions were by women. And then they think it's positive. And they think, oh, it's getting better, isn't it? And then you look at the numbers for a Black and Asian man, it's not much better, is it? And I go, is it really getting better? And why are we accepting that 5% is actually good or better? So I invite you all to actually have a proper look at the report, because when you go inside, you can see orchestra by orchestra, how they did, how much of the concerts presented music by women and men, and how much presented you have a lot of 0% on diversity in many orchestras, including the top ones like the Berlin Philharmonics, the Austria Philharmonic, South America is also very bad, I have to say, and other countries. But it's not something you can do in 5 minutes. I invite you just to take 10 minutes with a cup of tea, and it's eye-opening. So so far, what we managed to do with DONNE, so we have one of the biggest database dedicated to women composers. The multimedia resources are free, and they have been used by many organizations, educators, performers. Scala Radio did a partnership with us, and I could introduce 30 women they never played before there. We have funded new commissions, provided mentorship to young composers, have ambassadors joining us, and more importantly for me is that more people around the world heard about these women. But this is what I ask myself every time, because I'm sure Elizabeth and Louise, you hear this a lot. People say, oh, but you do so much, but is it enough? No, it's not enough. It's not enough, because people forget, right? And I learned a lot, and I have a lot more to learn. This is something that I keep learning in this project. So I can be a white feminist, but as Elizabeth said, my feminism can't be white. So I have to remember that women are not only white women, and we can't only have the Kenneth Mason family being the people who are inspiring our generation of musicians, or the Chineke Orchestra to be the one. I think we have to think of every time we program of the talent that we are not allowing to develop. And it sounds very tragic, but it actually is, you know, because we need to check our privilege. Okay, I might be an immigrant, I have a lot of prejudice moving here, but I still have my privilege, and I need to work on them and make sure that I help others. I don't think the situation has changed a lot. I think there are peaks of change, and then if we do not keep this ever working that never stops, it goes back to where it was. So that means the worst type of gatekeepers that we encounter are the ones who already think they know it all, you know, because they have positions, they think they have so much knowledge, or they have PhDs, or they have, you know, status, and it's going to be embarrassing for them to admit what they don't know. And that's why we have to keep this as a daily habit, and we have to challenge people, and it's uncomfortable, and it will be uncomfortable for them, and some of them might not react well because of they have all big egos, and it's part of it. But the truth is we all can do something. So performers can add, the general public can challenge organizations and orchestras and radio stations and people they know. Organizations can do much more, as we all know, especially the ones with more funding. Teachers, you know, volunteers can help, but for someone, and I bet all of you who ever worked with volunteers, my request is only volunteer only if you have the time, and if you can commit an hour or 2 hours a month, or just be very careful, because sometimes we have a lot of people offering volunteering, and then I really feel really bad, because I don't want to demand anything from a volunteer, but for us, having the expectation of a volunteering delivering something and then they can't do it, it's heartbreaking, because we kind of feel, oh really, but I really need it anyway. So donate, pick one. You don't have to donate to everybody, but at least pick one. If it's £5 a month, you know, pick your favorite, you know, buy a score, share what you've done, try to inspire other people to do the same, because that's what we need, and connect with other people who are, you know, like-minded, who you think might enjoy this cause, and open their eyes. It's our job to do that. Share. So our next steps, do I still have time? I'm gonna run. Do a new research for 21-22, sorry. Complete more bios on the website, on the database. Grow to have 100 educational videos, expand the list to 10,000 women, have concert series, fund more commissions, provide grants to women in music. And number 8 is actually should be the top one, because we have no funding. So secure vital corporate sponsorship for us is the number 1 priority. Because like everybody else, and I wasn't as organized as Louise and Elizabeth, I have no idea how many hours of work. Everything you've seen, from recording, editing, posting, updating website, I do it all, right? I don't have no help at the moment. Zero funding, zero help. Since last year, we got a little funding to do the new website, and I got a small funding to help me with the research, but that's it. And we have this mistake as musicians and artists of not liking to talk about money. And this is our problem, because we should be really shouting out loud, because all of us are doing great work. And we are doing because we believe it, we have passion. And I believe change can only happen with people like us, humbly speaking. But we need the support of the public and organizations and corporate people and patrons and donors. And the only way we can do that is if more people help us to spread the word about the work we do, I believe. So cheap things to do, connect and share every day. Just connect with all of us, share what we post, share to somebody. You know, if you can donate, go to our page. If you know a corporate company that you know is a friend of might, you know, why not ask to get in touch? But connect and share. That's what I always want. Ask. Help us to spread this report. It's been fascinating to see the response. I already received a few orchestras who got back to me, and they are trying to get better. And this is what we need. We need results. And most importantly, I think, don't accept the idea this has to be slow. I don't believe this has to be slow. I refuse to believe this has to be slow. This can happen. And I think it has to be fast. So thank you guys. That's me.
Gabriella, thank you so much. That was really, really inspiring to hear all three of you talk so passionately about this need for change. Are there any specific questions? Because I appreciate we literally only have 4 minutes left before the end of the session. So feel free, if there are any questions, come off mute and actually put them to Louise, Elizabeth or Gabriella.
I'm just very aware from very many sides, because obviously I have my own personal awareness as a composer, but also as a conductor. And one's always working with a sort of inertia of repertoire, because when you're starting a new program, you can't just throw it all out and start, oh, now we're going to have 50%, because you've always got to, well, often have to build in things which are more known and less known. And then the things which sell, everybody says, well, people will come to this because they know it, because people love what they know. So it's how to, I mean, at the same time, yes, people do love new things, but they have to resemble the old things. And so it's I mean, I just applaud what you're all doing. It's thoroughly inspiring. And I'm feeling so guilty for being so wrapped up in my own feeling of why can't I get my music done, that I actually am not doing enough myself to program. So I think I'm on the point of ordering a set of books, Louise, for my choir, because that's one way that I because really it's just this inertia. How does one get against it? Sorry, that's an unanswerable question. I'll mute myself.
Can I just say, Janet, I mean, you are a fabulous composer and you are contributing to all of this repertoire that people can find and look at and program and perform. So you are doing wonderful things. And I too, Louise, am trying to find the money to buy a set of your scores. Funding is such a big element, isn't it? Actually finding the right kind of funding to pay for you, and as Louise was saying, the work, there is more work for more full-time people in the research area, and just even I know we've had lockdown and 18 months of not doing very much, but as a freelance conductor, it's just about working all day for your 2-hour rehearsal and trying to find that repertoire. It's full on, isn't it? It's intense and there's no let up. So I do appreciate that. I've written the word value down here in big capital letters. There needs to be such visibility and value for all of these underrepresented composers and conductors. I'm going to put that out there. Leslie, do you have anything, or Caroline?
You are very perceptive, Amy. As one of only 2 males who have been following this discussion with great interest, what bothers me is that we are the only 2 males attending this session, because I think the key now is to persuade male conductors that there is repertoire of great distinction by female composers, and it's up to the men as well to promote it. It must not be a clique. It's got to be more widespread. And the thing the things that I'm involved in, we always put the question, where do women fit into this as a priority? Where do females, and indeed people of other ethnic backgrounds? So the question has to be in the forefront of male conductors' minds all the time.
And there are some great advocates, Ben Parry I'm thinking of, and Patrick, obviously Ali's, so many other male conductors who are very supportive. But also I know from Louise's perspective, actually, on the other hand as well, so people who have completely come away and taken a step away from supporting female conductors and composers, which is so awful to hear about and so shocking. And that just exacerbates the problem further, doesn't it? We actually just, if everybody could be on board with this and have an equal future, then that's where we want to be, really.
I mean, we're dealing with an enormous societal problem. It's not really a music issue, it's a societal issue. And I think this is the trouble. We're desperately trying to do our bit for it through the field of music. But actually, of course, the influences that are affecting whether men want to come on board or not are much wider than music.
I would even go further, Reese. It's not only men. I actually got a orchestra manager from Belgium because after we published this report, I wrote to all the 100 orchestras myself personally, and I shared with them and I asked, would you like to do something about it? We are here. And when I say here is me and my multiple personalities, right? You understand that? And then one of them replied to me saying, oh, we already do a lot. We had one female conductor last year in this orchestra in Brussels, right? And to be honest with you, our audience doesn't care the sex or the color of the composer. So we only care about quality. And then I you know, when you read, and this was a woman, right? This was a woman, well-educated, the artistic director or whatever, or the director of the orchestra, who I didn't have the patience to reply to her yet, because honestly sometimes you just don't have the energy to deal with people like that. You just have to focus on the ones who actually are listening. But I'm very committed. This research, I'm going to positively shame all these people every year, and if I can, I'm going to grow to 300 to 500 until somebody responds, because if they're not going to be showing results in the next year, and I don't know, I have 3 credit cards in debt already for 3 years of this work, and I'm a singer as well, right? So I have to focus what I'm doing in my career and practice. But I don't care, because I think that's urge, that's what we all need. You know, it's exhausting, but when you see the results, is, you know, it's worth it. It's worth it. But we need to unite. We need to kind of really unite and be daily. Sorry, I will shut up.
I know, this is great to hear, Gabriella. I think if anyone is watching this back who isn't with us today, do please point any funding or corporate funding, sponsorship to the direction of Gabriella and Elizabeth and Louise. Janet said the smaller Oxbridge campaign, One Equal Music, which has borne fruit. Yeah. And there's also a Cambridge festival as well, isn't there? Can someone remind me of the name of the Cambridge festival?
Minerva.
Minerva, that's it. I'm trying to read Elizabeth's lips. Minerva, that's right. Yeah. This morning has been really fascinating, and it's so exciting to hear the 3 of you speak so passionately about the need for this. Equality and diversity, you know, it needs to be running as a stream throughout everything that we do. But I do feel that we are just after 11 and we do need to wrap up. Thank you once again to everybody for joining us this morning on behalf of ABCD, and thank you, Elizabeth Briley. Sorry we can't hear you. See you all soon.
Thanks, Amy.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.